here's the thing. The Bible says God is the potter. We would say master potter, but he's the potter. And he does things with clay that will take your breath away.
Gord, we're so pleased to be able to recognize you tonight with the Distinguished Alumni Award, and we're pleased to count you amongst our outstanding graduates from the 1970s, and we appreciate your life and your service. I was thinking the other day about the first time you and I met. I was a student growing up here in Moncton, involved in the youth group at Highfield Baptist Church, and you were a new youth pastor in Hillsborough. And I remember meeting you at events that you provided direction to and things that you spoke at, and later as you served at First Baptist in Moncton. I think, Gord, those years that you invested in youth ministry stood you well as you went on to pastor both in Ottawa and back in Louisville. And I think you've always had a heart for younger people. You've been a skilled teacher and preacher. You would have made Roger Nicole proud. But more than that, you've had a heart for people and a heart of compassion and empathy. And I've admired that in you all of these years. I thank you for your investments at Crandall. I thank you that you served on the board during the time that I've been here as president. I always appreciated your support and welcome that. I thank you for teaching here at Crandall. Your Romans course was a favorite amongst many students. But most of all, Gord, I probably appreciate the fact that when you pastored at Louisville, that church that both you and I had the opportunity to serve on staff, you welcomed Crandall students into the life of that congregation. You remembered, I think, what it was like to be somebody who had left Cape Breton, come to Moncton to study, wondering where they might fit in local church life, looking for a home, looking for a place to belong. And during your pastorate at Louisville, many students from Crandall found a home here in Moncton. So thank you for making them welcome. Thanks for your service. We wish all the best for you and Rosalie as you enter this new season of life, having retired from full-time ministry. We admire your service and your leadership, and thank you for all that you've done in the name of Christ here in Moncton and beyond.
I grew up in North Sydney on Cape Breton Island. My mom got as far as grade 8, my dad grade 10. He quit school to take a job to earn money to support his family. Junior high and high school there in North Sydney was, shall we say, rough. A lot of bullying through junior high, and then we just fought our way through high school. The decision to come to ABC did not involve any recruitment. My mom and dad heard about ABC through church and thought it would be safer than my going straight to Dal. See, I saw ABC as a stopover on my way to Dalhousie University. I was headed for marine biology. So I took the standard arts courses in the day, including biology, chemistry, statistics, and the required Bible courses. I expected to stay 1 year, maybe 2. I wound up staying 3. And it was in an October morning of that 3rd year that I was praying. God's hand was heavy on me, and I sensed He was calling me to ministry, and I didn't want to go. And finally, I just said, okay, I'll go to ministry if you want me to, but you've got to get me ready because I don't know anything. See, I would not have been thought of as distinguished in those days. Maybe extinguished would have been better. During that time at ABC, there were a couple of friends that were special. Jonathan Gorham and Kevin Smith. We played hockey together. We were in the dorm together. Both of them were in our wedding. And I had other friends, of course. Danny Power, who lived across the hall during my 2nd year, and his parents would call every once in a while and ask Danny and I if we wanted to go out, and we would get supper. And there were some special people at ABC. George Turner taught us chemistry, but he took me aside one day and he took my file and he probably showed me some things I shouldn't have seen. But he showed me that through testing and over the years, it had been determined that I had great potential. And he looked me right in the eye and he said, "You're wasting your potential. People with this in their file should be doing better than you are right now." Peter Henderson was an English prof. Picture long hair, sandals with wool socks, and a little quirky, but it was his office that was open when I wanted to talk and I was ready to quit. He would sit and listen and he'd offer a little bit of wisdom here and there. There was Ramona Wagner, now Mitchell. She got wind of the fact that I was cramming for first term exams, and that I had about 8 hours sleep in 7 days. I wasn't eating because eating made me want to sleep. I was existing on instant coffee. Ramona got the guys and she said, "Bring them to me." I went down to the kitchen, she filled me with turkey sandwiches and coffee and said, "Now go write your exam." There was Ralph Richardson. He was a prof, but he was a friend. Table tennis, hockey. In later years, after I was back and in the ministry, we would go to Burger King in Dieppe and have breakfast about every second week, and we would argue theology there in Burger King. We golfed together, and then there was the preaching, teaching style. Ralph would start to teach, and then somewhere along the line, he would get fired up and he would start to preach. That would show up for me years later. Came full circle when years later I was teaching Romans at Crandall. I'm not even sure how long, 10 years, 12 years. But I remember I think I taught a Ralph-style Romans. I remember being in the classroom and teaching, and then kind of getting fired up and starting to preach, and caught myself and looked at the students and said, I was preaching right there, wasn't I? And they would start to laugh. Took me back to those years with Ralph at the old ABC. And through Ralph, when I got to Gordon Conwell Theological Seminary, I met a professor named Roger Nicole who asked me where I was from. I said, New Brunswick. His only question, "You know Richardson?" I said, yes, he was my professor. He talked about Ralph's papers and exams and how excellent they were. Within weeks, I was doing research for Roger Nicole. I was teaching portions of courses for him. And of course, I was trained in theology, particularly the atonement. He signed some books for me. And more important than the fact that he signed the books was what he signed. He called me things like my good friend, faithful preacher, faithful disciple. And what I learned there with Roger Nicole led to ministry opportunities. Muskoka Baptist Conference, Ligonier Ministries, which is R.C. Sproul, Carey Ministries, doing overseas short-term teaching, Romania a couple of times, Bosnia-Herzegovina, Serbia, Croatia, all the time teaching the theology. But here's what's for sure. I knew a little more than that first morning in my dorm room at ABC. Moments, you could only call them seminal moments, that came from ABC. I was there during the days of Stuart Murray, and I heard that he was dying of cancer. And so I came home from seminary for the summer, and I set a meeting with him. Now, the chief and I didn't always get along. In fact, we debated some. But in that year of his death, I sat down in Moncton with him, and I said, Chief, you and I have often disagreed. And he laughed, what everyone who knew him will know as his chortling laugh. I asked him, "What do I need to know about pastoring?" He said, "Well, Gordon, I never considered myself much of a pastor, but," he says, "I do know this. Every great church in the history of the world has been built on the preaching of sound doctrine. So preach sound doctrine. Illustrate it well. Spend as much time on illustrations as you do on the exegesis." And so from that day, in Moncton to Ottawa and back to Moncton, I preached doctrine. I illustrated lots, and I saw God give us the increase time and again. I met my wife, Rosalie, at Atlantic Baptist College. She was singing in a musical group from here called Ecclesia, and she didn't like me. Well, for good reason. I was arrogant, some would say cocky. I wasn't very likable. But she used me to get drives from work out to have practices with Ecclesia, because she was a member of the church I was serving in those days. And so I was happy to drive her out to the rehearsals. And then one Sunday afternoon, her sister Daphne, who was going to Atlantic Baptist College at the time, was sitting down in the old lower concourse, and I came down the concourse, and she just said to me, well, she would know me as Fiddler. Many did. She said, "Fiddler, do you know Gordon MacLeod?" Now notice she didn't ask me if I was Gordon MacLeod. She asked me if I knew Gordon MacLeod. And so I said, yes. And she said, "What's he like?" And I said, "Well, he's one of the guys from the dorm. He plays on the hockey team. I don't know. What do you want me to say? Why are you asking anyway? Why do you want to know about Gordon MacLeod?" She said, "Well, my sister Rosalie has been asking a lot of questions about Gordon MacLeod." Yes! And in 2 weeks from now, it'll be 45 years we're married. There needs to be a medal for her for that. We have 3 children that we're grateful for, 2 daughters and a son. Our oldest daughter, Heather, graduated from Crandall with her ed degree. Dan is a lobster fisherman there on Graham and Ann, and Heather is a teacher. And her younger daughters, Mim and Liv, go to school at the same school Mom teaches at. And there is an older daughter, Adia, who lives here in the city of Moncton. She is an LPN. We have a second daughter. Her name is Sarah. She attended Crandall, but left there to go to Holland College, where she trained and graduated as a chef. And she's living on PEI with her husband and their 6 dogs. We have a son. His name is Joshua. He came to Crandall, graduated in the ed program, played basketball here. In fact, if you take a walk by the Sports Wall of Fame, his name is on there. And he is now back on Grand Manan, where he is a lobster